The conversation surrounding boxing's financial future has taken a dramatic turn, and suddenly the entire sport feels tense, uneasy, and strangely destined for this moment. Every empire that rises too fast eventually hits the ceiling of its own ambition. Every system powered by endless spending eventually reaches a point where the money behind it is forced to reveal its limits. That is exactly the feeling creeping into boxing circles now, as new reports suggest that Turkey Alashik and the PIF are preparing to dramatically scale back their massive investment in the sport starting in 2026. For years, boxing fans were mesmerized by the spectacle. The Saudi-backed events were unlike anything the sport had ever seen. Heavyweight supercards stacked with names that promoters could only dream of placing on the same night. Production quality that felt like Hollywood. Fighter purses so inflated they made traditional promoters look like small-scale operators by comparison. The message was simple: this was a new era, a new financial engine, and boxing had finally found its modern-day gold rush. But beneath the fireworks, under the gloss, behind the immaculate staging, there were always cracks, subtle, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Because a system built on limitless money is often the first one to collapse when reality walks in. And reality, as always, was waiting just around the corner. Many fans were shocked by the revelation. But not everyone. Analysts who had been skeptical from day one saw the storm coming long before anyone else could smell the rain. The strategy behind the Saudi push was easy to understand. Bring the biggest fighters, pay the largest sums, consolidate global star power, and create a boxing empire so massive that the entire sport would orbit around it. But the plan had one fatal flaw: boxing is not a sport that can simply be transplanted. American boxing thrives because American fans watch from American cities, at American times. It's not built for afternoon fights competing directly with college football, NBA games, tennis tournaments, and a dozen other sports that dominate the US weekend landscape. No matter how big the purses were, no matter how bright the lights shined, no audience was going to abandon its favorite sports just because a card happened to feature superstar names. The viewership never matched the spending. The product never justified the cost. And the UK wasn't immune either. Britain once had one of the strongest, most vibrant boxing ecosystems in the world. But when Saudi cards began throwing around life-changing money, the domestic scene slowly decayed. Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn found themselves shipping blockbuster after blockbuster overseas, starving the very structure they had spent decades building. Fighters got paid, yes, but many of them lost the long-term career development that once defined the British system. The consequences eventually became painfully clear, especially in cases like Jared Anderson. Against the guidance of his team, Anderson pursued a Saudi payday that matched him against Martin Bakol, a seasoned, dangerous heavyweight who wasn't just another name on a poster. Bakol smashed through Anderson's momentum, and now the young American is being thrown into a brutal matchup with Frank Sanchez. Another loss could send his career spiraling backward. These fights weren't born from merit or progression. They were products of a financial machine that demanded recognizable names facing recognizable names every month. Boxing was never meant to operate that way. The sport was built on patience, discipline, slow elevation, and intelligent matchmaking. When you replace progression with pressure, when you replace development with desperation, careers don't grow, they crack. Even the youngest prospects weren't spared. Abdullah Mason, one of boxing's brightest new stars, was thrown into a gritty, punishing fight with Sam Noakes far earlier than he should have been. Yes, he won. Yes, he grew. Yes, he proved his heart. But in a traditional, well-paced career path, that fight happens a year or two later, when the fighter has fully settled into his prime form. Instead, financial demand forced a shortcut, and shortcuts in boxing always come with risk. Then comes the most uncomfortable truth of all: the money was never unlimited. That was the myth sold to the public. That was the illusion that powered the empire. People insisted that Saudi backers didn't care about profit, that this was about prestige, exposure, and reshaping the global future of boxing. But eventually, every empire faces the numbers. The introduction of pay-per-view charges on cards that once claimed they would always be free was the first crack in the facade. Not because promoters wanted more revenue, but because the operation needed it. And when a project needs profit to survive, the illusion of bottomless wealth collapses instantly. Now the reports say the funding must be redirected, not because boxing failed, but because national priorities have shifted. The kingdom must focus on long-term projects, not burning hundreds of millions on entertainment that doesn't produce sustainable returns. Boxing wasn't a bad investment. It was simply an expensive one, too expensive to sit at the top of the national agenda forever. Of course they will deny everything. They have to. The contracts, the broadcasters, the fighters, all depend on the illusion of stability. Ring Magazine, promoters, advisors, all will push counter-narratives because the moment instability becomes public, the marketplace collapses. The machine will keep spinning until the exact second the exit strategy is complete. But the writing is on the wall. And everyone who pays attention can read it. If funding truly pulls back in 2026, boxing will be forced into a period of rebuilding. A return to the roots that built legends, domestic development, steady matchmaking, gradual ranking climbs, and promoters who invest in fighters for the long haul. Some believe this will be a blessing in disguise. Others fear a major collapse before the rebuild even begins. The truth, as always, sits in the middle. Yes, the Saudi era brought unforgettable nights, massive events, and cards that felt like once-in-a-lifetime celebrations. But it also accelerated careers too quickly, distorted matchmaking, inflated fighter expectations, and created a financial bubble no traditional promoter can sustain. When the faucet